Welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where each episode you get to listen to two of Australia's leading professionals in the area of driving and community mobility for people with disabilities. In each episode, they interview drivers, carers, and industry experts and share the insider's guide to driving with a disability. Here are your hosts, Brad and Ollie.
G'day and welcome to the Drive Able podcast. I'm Brad Williams here, and over there is Ali Akbarium. Today we are talking to Lisa and Alex from mydriveschool.com. They've developed a driving simulator for learning to drive that everybody can afford. We're excited to talk to them about how we can use this simulator for people with disabilities. Ali, you ready for this great episode?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's get into it.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to get into today's interview. But before we get started, we just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. This show takes time and money to put together, and we're forever thankful for their passion to our industry. Okay, enough with the business. Let's get into the interviews. Today, we have Alex, who is the leader of partnerships and culture at My Drive School, and Lisa Scaife, who is the director and CEO and developer of My Drive School. Thanks very much for joining us today, Alex and Lisa. We're going to start with the first question. Can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a background about My Drive School? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go. I'm Lisa Scaife. I'm the CEO and founder of My Drive School. My Drive School is a simulation game to teach people how to drive online. I have a background. I've worked for more than 20 years in professional motorsport. I was involved in a fatality when I was 22, and I have teenage sons. So when I started to look at and realize the road statistics around the road toll, it really it was an eye-opener. It was a massive eye-opener for me. So I went about researching what are the issues around road trauma and how we can do something about it. And it turns out that more than in the first 3 years of licensure, more than up to 95% of fatalities are caused by human error. So we need to fix the driver. And that's obviously, with my background, I thought I can do a reasonable job of that. So with all the research, we started looking up simulators and gaming and all sorts of things. And simulators are great in terms of their, efficacy and output, but you can't get the people to the simulators or the simulators to the people. They're cost and resource prohibitive. So we found I found a case study on Gran Turismo, or a program they did called GT Academy, which was an online simulation game. Gran Turismo, and they got 43,000 people that did this program, because the prize pool was a whole year in an open wheeler around Europe. So an amazing prize. So anyway, 43,000 people all did this. They got the top 20, took them to Brands Hatch with Johnny Herbert and a couple of other ex-F1 drivers. And the young guy that ended up winning it was a 19-year-old Spaniard called Lucas Ordonez, and he only last year finished his full-time racing career as a professional driver. But prior to that, prior to getting to Brands Hatch in the first place, he'd never ever sat his butt in a real race car. So he'd learned all these cognitive skills and racecraft and everything on a flat screen with a portable steering wheel and pedal set. And when I realized that, I went, well, if people can learn those sort of high order cognitive skills, I can teach people how to drive online. It's safe, it's scalable, it's cost and time effective. And that's where we went. So, it took nearly 7 years to actually develop the program. We went through many iterations trying to get it absolutely right. And we launched at the 2019 Australian Grand Prix. And we won the Australasian Serious Games Congress the same year. And since then, that year we got into about 20 schools, but our early adopters have been either private schools or special needs schools. But another day when I was actually at a school, we were doing quite a large group of kids, and there would have been probably 30 in the room, and they all do it on their own laptops, and everybody's got a steering wheel pedal set each, and you can always tell the kids that have done a bit of gaming or, pretty good. Anyway, there was this kid right up the back, and everybody else had nearly finished and started packing up. And then they started to crowd around this kid. And, I sort of walked up to have a look, and he was doing the slalom. And in our slalom, it's the only exercise in the program where we don't actually have a speed limit. And we do that for a reason, because we want to teach, vehicle dynamics and stability. And at a certain speed, the car will not turn in. So, they're good things, especially for young boys to learn. Because our motto now is we want people to make their mistakes online, not on road. So anyway, so I said to him, "Oh, you're doing a great job." I said, "How fast can you do that slalom?" He said, 58 or something. And I said, "Well, my 12-year-old can do it at 70. And he's like, "Oh," and he got really and I was sort of laughing, just having a giggle with him. But then the teacher afterwards got me aside and said, "I've known that kid for 6 years." And she said, he's got ADHD, and I've never, ever seen him sit still for more than 15 minutes. And I've never seen him so engaged. I wish I had a video to be able to show this to his mum. And he was just absolutely over the moon. And that was probably the first time I sort of saw firsthand the engagement levels and what have you of people, especially kids with autism or on the spectrum at all, and how they just get right into it and love it. Like, I mean, that was, that's probably, and I've done other programs in special needs schools, and just their enjoyment, engagement levels are amazing. And I like to give those kids an opportunity that maybe other people wouldn't. You can't firsthand put them straight in the car and see if they're going to be any good. This is a great tool for people to be able to go use it as a test or an assessment tool to gauge their capacity to be able to learn to drive.
Yeah. Look, Lisa, I can speak firsthand as well. As an OT, this tool, the My Drive School tool, has been excellent for being able to test the road environment in a safe way. So you can even do it before you get your license, which is awesome. So traditional way is to get your L's and then go into a car, and a lot of people get overwhelmed in that type of scenario. But what we've found is that before they get their license, before they get their L's, they can test out whether driving is a good fit for them in a safe and relatable area.
So can I interject before we go further? For people listening and people like myself who have never had engagement with it, can you explain how it works and what it is?
Oh, sure. Sorry. My Drive School, it's a simulation program.
Is it a game, or is it like, do you use a steering wheel? Like, how does it work?
So it's a steering wheel that you use, that literally you can buy from JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman, off-the-shelf steering wheel that you can use with your laptop or PC. No Macs. Gaming doesn't work on Macs.
Yep.
And literally you plug your steering wheel into your computer, and this program is designed specifically for pre-learner drivers. So it was always designed to bridge the gap between theory and practical. I mean, whether or not people, are impaired or not, nobody should have to get in the car with somebody who's never, ever driven before.
Yeah.
This is actually just to show them how much lock to put on, basic road rules, remind them to put their blinkers on. And it's a series of graduated modules and exercises that are all pass-fail. So they get, effectively a little bit harder. And then we've got a lot of traffic in it. So, and there's a lot of artificial intelligence. So every time they play, it's different. So it's not straight rote learning.
Is it like a game, or is it more like an instructional kind of like thing?
Okay, so it is an instructional educational tool, but I call it a game.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it is. What the whole idea around it is, I want people to enjoy it, and they think they're having fun, but incidentally, they're actually learning all the road rules and learning all the in-cabin cognitive skills they need to be able to learn to drive.
Alex.
Yeah, okay, no, that explains it really well. So it's kind of like, it reminded me of me being 12-year-olds in the 80s when there wasn't that many people around and driving around with my dad in the car park type thing.
Yeah.
Pre-driving.
But online.
Yeah. Because like back then there wasn't that many people around. So, it was, that's kind of what you did. But now it's so many more people, it's probably a bit harder to do stuff like that. So.
And shopping centres are open 24 hours, so you can't actually go.
Yeah, they used to be closed after work, So.
Yeah, everyone was down there on a Sunday with their L plates, and you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Ali, to add to Lisa's point on the subject of it being a game or not, it's interesting because, sometimes maybe the idea of a game trivializes, for some people might trivialize something. And I guess that's where, winning the Best Serious Games Award, that kind of speaks a bit to that point. It's a serious game, but we talk about it being a Gen Z, it's for pre-learners or people around the learner stage, and it's using a medium that they're familiar with, which is gaming. So it's immediately accessible. Like, oh yeah, it's a steering wheel and pedal set that I would otherwise use for Gran Turismo or something else. So it's very relatable. But then the messages they learn along the way directly relate to what they need to know on the road. And it's
not about going faster. It's not about going faster. It's more about accuracy and steering accuracy and pedal control, about how
absolutely,
because it's not just press the button as hard as you can and steer to full lock to go around corners. It's actually learning to adjust your pressure, adjust your steering control in an environment that is if you're
acceleration control. So you're not looking at the speedo the whole time. You're actually learning how to monitor your speed at all times.
Yeah. Okay. How many people are using it at the moment?
Well, I mean, we've had over 8,000 people through, that have trialed it. And, at any one point, we've probably got 1,500 licenses.
And do you guys roll it out like through schools and stuff, or?
So that was always our objective, and that was my passion market, and it probably will always still be my passion market, that 15 to 18-year-old cohort, because that's the best way to improve road trauma generically. If we can get the rather than people doing 120 hours with their parents that have got 20 or 30 hours of bad habits. 20 or 30 years of bad habits, and they're teaching their kids. I tend to think, there's better ways to do it. So if we can get the young ones, if we train them a whole lot better, in X amount of years, there'll be a lot better drivers on the road. But and obviously we've had COVID in between that. And so Alex and I were looking at different markets, and they're obviously the disability, inclusion, all those markets have just jumped at it. We've had a lot of allied health professionals using the program as a training and assessment tool. We've had, Alex even talking to jails for, we're looking at developing specialist Indigenous programs. We're getting into all these different markets that wasn't necessarily what it was originally designed for, but it is perfect for those markets. We didn't, cold, so culturally and linguistically disadvantaged, perfect. There's lots of other areas where I didn't really see that need because I wasn't in that space, but now we are. It's just getting bigger.
Yeah, I think, well, on a side note, speaking of COVID, I've noticed maybe even you could have something for people that have forgotten how to drive, because it seems like there's a lot of people that have forgotten how to drive for the last 2 years, or they're just out of practice and they're really struggling or haven't lost the confidence. So that could actually be something marketed. But aside from that, I think actually for disability, I don't know how big it is within the industry, but given the conversations we've had with some of the people that we've interviewed, that they're talking about it takes a little while to get used to those kind of road environments, and this is a fantastic way to do it without having too much risk, and also not having to pay so many hundreds of dollars per hour for driving lessons, and whatever it is. Not to say that they shouldn't do that, Brad. I'm not trying to put that down, but it's kind of like
never designed to replace any driver training, not at all. It's used as precursor before they get in the car, and a supplementary tool. So when driving instructors actually get in the car, they're doing things probably a lot more important with them than, do you know what I mean? Like they're actually working with them a lot more than these base skills.
Like Brad has said in the past with some other guests that we've spoken to, they've sometimes been stuck and just doing kind of emotional management, you know, because of the environment. And that's a huge waste of someone's potential NDIS funds. So it would be good to, you know, minimize that, I guess. And this seems like a great tool to be able to just get people a bit more comfortable with that environment. So
Ali, on that, and one example that I find a really powerful one, there's a section of the program where you come up to a T intersection, the user comes up to a T intersection and they have to wait for a break in the traffic. And because it uses artificial intelligence, it's not a rote learning thing. It's not like someone that's had multiple plays will say, oh, I'll wait for the orange car and then I've got 10 seconds. It's different all the time. And when I talk to people that have used it with a client, or when you watch people doing it, sometimes they become impatient, which I would say is a good thing, because that's a real world situation, coming up to a T intersection and it's busy and it might be a little while before you get that break in traffic. Sooner or later, you're going to have to make a decision. And that's where I think perhaps, and Brad, interested to hear your thoughts as the OT here. It's great where an OT can look and just assess what they're like with their level of patience at a T intersection. And I think surely that's absolutely something you want to be simulated, perhaps before you're really in a car, and then it might be we have to turn around and go home, or and particularly with clients with different degrees of autism, that comes up a lot. Like it's a bit too hard, they do it easily. What a great way to assess without putting them in danger if perhaps they're not going to be able to perform those higher order skills on the road, which, as we know, all of us that drive, you need to be able to do that. So that's where it functions really well as an assessment tool first, and then as a training tool, once they show some promise, I suppose repeated plays with a different AI and a different setting, if they can then navigate through that on a simulator, I just think what a great way for them to learn in a safe environment before actually getting out in the car.
Yeah, look, I can talk to that. I don't know if people know or not, but we've got one of these simulator packages that we utilize for clients. I can talk firsthand of a client this week where we've decided that driving is not a good match for him at this stage because of the level of multitasking that's involved with driving. So pedal control, steering control, and like you're talking about, Alex, the ability to process the amount of information you need to as a driver, as in looking to the right, looking to the left, waiting, and then being able to initiate what you need to do the next bit. And the level of concentration to be able to do that at this stage, we've decided that it's not a good fit at the moment as a 15 coming to 16-year-old, and that we need to probably give it a few more years where we settle into the next part of life, and then see if we've developed a little bit more ability to do that at this higher level of cognitive functioning. And it was a great way to do that, rather than pushing someone through the learner process to be able to learn all the road rules, to be able to then sit in a car, which is extremely overwhelming for some people because there's a massive risk involved in it. Yeah, the safe environment of sitting in an office, but it is still relatively real life. It is, you can relate it to what you've seen as a passenger in a car. It's an environment that is something that can be utilized. The OT can look over the back. From my point of view, the occupational therapist can be basically a backseat driver like we are in our assessments, but watching how they interact with the environment that's on the simulator. But the one thing that I've found so good about this program is the entry level costs for people compared to the simulators that are out there for multiple thousands of dollars. And you need special programs and special computers and gaming cards, and you name it, you need the whole system for thousands and thousands of dollars. What we've found is that this is really accessible and something that people can do at home. Did you want to talk about that, and about maybe how can it be funded by the NDIS as an example? Is this something that we can?
Yeah, that was something I was going to ask. I'll just put a couple of points in there if you could cover them as well. I was thinking One, yeah, how are you guys charging? Is it like subscription, or do you buy something? Do you need an active internet connection, and what level of internet connection? And yeah, like, how does it roll out? Do you go to companies, individuals?
Okay, we're looking at rolling it out through, I mean, we go B2B plus B2C. B2C for, directly to the consumer. We have NDIS packages that are fully rebatable through the participants' core support package as an assistive technology for specialised driver training. So we have two different packages. There's a $395 and I think it's a $695, and that just depends on the different steering wheels. One's got force feedback and one hasn't. The force feedback one is a lot better. We're comparing a Toyota to a Lamborghini,
Yeah.
and
So it includes the hardware, this $395. You guys supply the hardware.
yes, and that's got a 12-month license to go with that. And that's for the B2C market directly. So we say to occupational therapists, you should recommend that your patients actually do the program at home, so they can actually be practicing and what have you. But then we have enterprise solutions for occupational therapists, depending upon how many patients they see when they're using it as a tool in their offices for multiple patients. Yeah.
I'll just talk about that, about the different steering wheels. For anyone that's listening to this, the difference in steering wheels does make a difference for real life scenarios. We've found some of the cheaper steering wheels that are maybe available are sprung loaded. So you let go and it comes back to center, where the other one, you have to steer it back to center, which is a bit more like a real life car scenario. So we've found that the steering wheel does make a difference, but if finances are an issue for somebody, they don't have NDIS funding, but if you do have NDIS funding, the difference in steering wheel, if you're looking to learn to drive, especially for somebody that is looking with autism and they want it relatable more relatable to a real car scenario, that higher level steering wheel does make a difference. So from an OT's point of view, if NDIS can cover it, or if the finances can cover it, the steering wheel that gives you proper feedback makes a massive difference.
I would absolutely concur with that. Yeah.
I'll add something to both your point, Lisa, and Brad, yours also on that. So the program, as Lisa had said, is done on a PC or a laptop, and there are some system requirements there, and they're clearly stated there on the website. My Drive School is something that we want as many people as possible to be able to access. So obviously simulations My Drive School can be done in VR and all that sort of thing, but we wanted it to be delivered quite simply and then be accessible to anyone. So it's that mix of the highest fidelity we could possibly get to real driving in a simulator, but then something that's easily deployable and usable on most people's sort of PC laptop they have at home. The steering wheel pedal set comes in a box that can arrive at a residential address, it can arrive at a business. So I'd say it's that spot there where as real as we can get it, but also not something that requires complex setup and lots of those other things that would make it not available to everyone. So people that are on the NDIS that have driving as a goal, as Lisa said, they can have it sent to their home. They or their parent or guardian themselves can set it up, and they can get some good hours in practicing that in a really safe environment wherever they're based.
And Alex, you were suggesting that to me in another conversation that we had prior to this, that you might be doing some research in this area with how the simulator fits with disability.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lisa and I are talking about this sort of thing all the time, and we do have the results of our initial trials where it was independently assessed by professional assessors, and participants of My Drive School rated 48% more competent and 17% less anxious, which is fantastic. And you might say the competency, well, 48% more competent, but what we're finding is 17% less anxious. For a lot of people, being anxious about driving is a real prohibiting factor. And I guess in a post-COVID environment too, where some people have lost interest about maybe getting their license, or they've lost momentum there, not being able to get their 120 hours. But back to your initial point, Brad, ongoing, the feedback we all get is very encouraging. And we're in discussions with some universities about how we would set that up and do some more formalized trials around people before and after doing My Drive School, because some of the learnings there, it can be quite different for each individual, but they're not going to put themselves at risk while they're doing it. They're going to learn a lot more than just, I don't know, say watching a video or seeing a sign about not speeding if they experience that. So yeah, we're currently doing that. We're in discussions with people because it's pretty clear that there's a very different effect after people have done the program.
There's also some research in a document that I did quite some time ago. I think this one's out of America, and they did a randomized clinical trial from to determine the effectiveness of simulator training on driving performance with clients with neurological impairment, citing 86% of participants passed their driving test after completing simulation training, as opposed to 17% who didn't.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I thought of when we were first starting this this podcast, when you were talking about the program, was when I was younger, I always remember a story a teacher told me about how these couple of basketballers were practicing playing basketball and practicing shooting hoops. And one of them was basically instructed to go home and just do nothing. And the other one was instructed to go home and practice in their mind. So just picture yourself doing it. Don't actually do it. Just picture yourself doing it. And that person came back and was like 50% better the next day. So it just shows you that it's much more than just, you know, being on the road. There's a lot of processing, I guess, that you just got to get used to. And this helps with that. And I think particularly for this space and the disability, it's really exciting to have such a tool available. So
yeah, absolutely.
Not
And I've seen it firsthand.
My son even, and you know, my son's had a fair bit of, you know, experience in carts and all sorts of things, you know, with our background, but he's got his L's. And I remember the first time we went out with him, you know, he was like, "Oh, Mum, I had no idea you had to do all this stuff at the same time." Yeah. And you just go, "Oh my God, every person has to go through that. With or without impairments, that's still a really difficult task."
Yeah. And
you cannot expect people to be able to read a book or watch a video or something, and then miraculously I can drive a car.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Ali, something that you said there, the very first thing that people do, just to the people watching this, to give them some idea to a picture of it, the first thing you do is you've got a speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour. So it's really basic stuff. You bring the car up over 30, hold it between 30 and 40, so you can be just under 40, that's the limit. And you come to a safe stop when you approach the stop sign. And nearly anyone that does it comes up too slowly. If they come up too quickly, it's not like in a racing game where you don't really care, well, you don't have stop signs. And it's amazing how many people stop a bit shy and then will look at me and say, "Do I need to?" I said, "Well, yeah, you need to drive a bit further." And it sort of exaggerates the learning. And we're all sitting there thinking, this is such a simple task. But I think anytime we're learning something new, you kind of want to exaggerate the motion to then make it natural. And Ali, what you said about imagining shooting the hoops, like just being overly conscious about 40 kilometer speed limit, stop sign. And I've seen over time how important that is for people to really absorb that learning. And it's great if they stop a bit shy, then cool, you did, rather than do that on the road, there was a little bit less stress, or coming up too quickly and stopping at the last minute, that's not appropriate on the road either. And your example of just visualizing doing it, then thinking visually about what that experience was, have them do that here before they go out there. And as simple as it is, I don't think it's too simple for most people, because very rarely do people get it spot on first go.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it would be better than having like what I did, your mum screaming and shouting every time you go in the car because you're going to ruin the family car, you know, so adding to the stress. So so I think this is great because she doesn't have to sit there and scream and shout that you're going to ruin the car, you know. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, I can't believe that we've gone past 20 minutes already.
Oh, sorry.
Time flies when we're having fun. And look, there is so much more to learn about My Drive School. But before we wind up, we want to thank our guests for coming on today, Alex and Lisa. Thank you very much. But we can't let you go yet. We asked one final question of all of our podcast guests, and that's what have you done in a car that is something special to you? We know that it's more than just getting from A to B. What's a memory that you've done in a car that means something special to you, or what's something that you've done that nobody else knows about? Lisa, should we start with you?
Oh, okay. Okay. Probably I've had lots of obviously experiences in cars and stuff because coming from a racing background. But probably one of the best ones I had for years. Maybe some of your clients might know of Scott McLaughlin. He's in the States now doing IndyCar. But he was driving with my husband's race team, and it was his last drive with us. And he said, Lace, do you want to come for a hot lap with me? And I got in the passenger seat and did a hot lap with Scotty. And usually drivers, when they do a hot lap with a guest, they're probably 2 or 3 seconds a lap off what their real race time is. Scotty was 1/10 of a second off because he was really trying to scare me. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that was his last drive, did you say, Lisa?
That was his last drive with Volvo.
Was that reason why it was his last drive? He scared you too much. And Alex, what's something that you've done in a car that's that we know that's not just getting from here to there? What's something special about cars for you?
Sure. Well, look, my fondest memory undoubtedly is I had a red VL Commodore as my first car. It was my pride and joy, and I was pretty popular amongst my mates for that. And I remember taking it down the Great Ocean Road by myself on a Sunday, not long after getting my driver's license. And I'm near the beach now, and I've loved the beach for a long time. And taking the car down there and the sense of freedom that I had with that, thinking I was pretty cool in that car. And I still love doing that drive to this day. And I sort of fell in love with that coastline from that. And that's still something I really enjoy doing to this day.
Yeah. Awesome. And it's thanks very much for sharing those. Hey, we can't thank you enough for coming on to today's podcast episode for us. If people want to know more about the My Drive School simulator program, where we can see behind your head there, Lisa, but where should people go to check out more information? Where could they find out if it's the right thing for them?
www.mydriveschool.com.
Yeah. Excellent. And what we'll do is we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So make sure that you go and check out the show notes. And if you've got a question for Alex or Lisa about it, head over to the Facebook page, Drive Able Podcast. Head over to the Facebook page and put in your questions after this. And we'll make sure that we pass them on to Alex and Lisa. And they can hopefully get back to you in regards to that. And all we can say is thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Brad.
Brad, Ali, really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ali.
Really
all right. So stick around, folks. As we do every episode, Ali and I are going to come back and reflect on our top 3 takeaways from the interview. So stick around for our analysis of the interview. But again, thanks very much, Alex and Lisa.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, sorry. I got my screen. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have this thing ready. All right. Ready again. 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. In this section, we bring you our expert analysis and top 3 takeaways from the interviews that is for this episode. This is where Brad and I provide more than 30 years of joint experience in the industry, helping people with disabilities to drive and get out in the community in a safe and meaningful way. So, Brad, learning number 1, what do you reckon?
All right. Well, huge thanks to Alex and Lisa. The best thing about My Drive School, from my experience, is how accessible this program is. The cost of of 395, I think it is for the basic program, up to 695 if you want the top level steering wheel, which we, as I mentioned in the podcast, we recommend because of the proper feedback it gets. But the fact that it's covered by NDIS under a core support, if you've got a disability, is just wonderful news for people that really want to test out driving and build capacity before getting in a car environment. It is so accessible to people, and that's the number one thing that we wanted to talk about here.
Yeah, and just before we came on, Brad and I were talking about other simulators that are on the market that, like, for example, myself being a distributor of products, we actually sell simulators in Australia ourselves. The first one that we sell is just shy of $30,000, and the other one is just shy of $90,000. Yeah. We've sold one, I think. So the point is that they're not accessible. You know, like whenever we got told these prices, we just thought, who's going to buy these? You know, they're just not accessible. So as soon as I heard that, it really makes me excited that people can actually have access to that.
Yeah, the only people that could afford the other ones were universities or big programs, where this is pitched at the individual level. And the difference, that another thing that we can point out here, the difference between Gran Turismo or whatever gaming thing that you want to do, whether it's PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it might be, there's a massive difference in regards to the goals that it's trying to do. So don't think that going to get an Xbox and getting Gran Turismo is the same thing. It's not. It's the goals that are set in this simulator are more about ticking off achievements that are safe. Rather than going faster, take this corner faster, leave braking to the last minute, it's actually encouraging the opposite of that, which is early braking, accurate steering, not running off into the sand and going over the ripple strips and all that kind of stuff. This is actually trying to get accurate and be patient.
Speaking again from my own personal experience, do not use those games, because I grew up on those games. I actually grew up on Grand Theft Auto. Yep. And my first 10 years, I lost of my driving experience. I lost my license 5 times. Yeah. So I truly attribute that because the way I was driving, like I was in Grand Theft Auto, and I was using Grand Theft Auto all through my high school. You know, so yeah, there you go. Don't use those games.
If you watched me on the podcast on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, I put my hand up when Alex was talking about, learning to stop at the stop line. I did that. I struggled to start off with, because as soon as I got on the simulator, I went into gaming mode. Yeah. And I had to readjust my brain to, hey, this is not about getting to the line as quick as you can. This is about accuracy and promotion of safe driving habits, braking over a longer distance, not slamming on the brakes and the car goes over the line. It's actually giving you real life, to a point, feedback of what it's going to be like when you actually jump into the car. Yeah. And I think that leads us nicely into the second point that we want to do. This is a starter program. This is a program to really boost your getting into the car before you get into the car. And they produce some pretty good stats, didn't they, Ali, in regards to helping that early start?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that, I think they said, like, you come out 85% more competent and 17% less anxious compared to people that haven't done that program. I think for me, the real big key is that confidence piece. When you're, in general, as a human, when you're confident in any activity, you tend to not get bogged down by any of the little things that come up, the little issues, the hurdles, you can tend to jump through them confidently because you're confident in this activity. And well, any hurdles come along, I can just jump through them. And as they were saying, when you first drive, particularly people that have autism and some of these, disabilities, the confidence is not there. And already in general in life, you're going through life with questions around confidence, around these kind of interactions. So this really helps to build that confidence in a secure manner, in a controlled manner. Yep. Like, for example, again, side note, one of the things that we offer at Mobility Engineering is private space for you to trial products, because it just makes you a bit more confident that you've just got your parents around and you don't have to have employees walking around. And, you know, it's just like, it's about having that confidence of that environment. And I think that's what that does. It really increases that confidence. And then you can start just working on the competencies more than anything.
Yeah. So it's a program that's designed for all 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds to help them boost their kickstart into driving in a safe way. But that's point number 3 that we want to bring you to now, is relating it to disability. I can talk from firsthand experience. We've used it with multiple clients now to get them kick-started. And what we've found is that it's the clients with autism, especially, that have a sensory processing issue. So struggle with the multiple senses that are in a car environment: speed, moving objects, sounds. There's so many things going on that need to be processed at a sensory level, that this helps people acclimatize to that. Even though they haven't got the rushing sound of a car or the noises and things like that, it allows them, from a visual stimulation point of view, to be able to get the sense of things moving towards them. They need to, the paddle shift on the simulator allows you to look left and right. And that swings from side to side, as like your head does. And that's another thing that allows people to get used to these sensory feedbacks of swinging their head to the left and to the right. You've got the noises. So they've got these artificial car noises as well. So there's all kinds of things that allows people to get used to and build their sensory defensiveness in a safe environment. So yeah, look, there's so many things that are great about, especially people with autism, but also ADHD was mentioned as well, but also the learning disabilities as well, intellectual disabilities. It creates a really great environment, especially for parents who are not sure if their kid's going to be able to drive. It's a wonderful area for them to be able to do that. You can do it at home. You don't have to do it with the OT, but if you need the OT to give a professional opinion, you know, the OT could then have a look at it in a safe environment too, right at the early stages.
Yeah, and on the last point on that, like I mentioned, you know, the parents, you know, we have given a lot of love to parents over the episodes of this podcast. However, as a parent who owns the car, they can traditionally get stressed when you're sitting in the car, and then they're not really clear. Their mind is not clear enough to judge properly. Whereas, so they might be under stress and going, "Oh, you're not a great driver, and you shouldn't be driving." Whereas the same person watching the same thing in the simulation might go, "Oh, actually, Brad, you're doing pretty good there. You know, like, oh, maybe we should go in the car." So again, it's helping that build that confidence in a family profile as well. So it's really good.
Even if you crash the car in the simulator, as in drive off course, you're actually not going to crash the car. It'll just come up with a red X that you drove outside the lines.
Yeah.
You can still start to look for the positive because the stress isn't there. Yeah. If you're driving outside the lines in a real car, as a parent, stress level is going to go through the roof, going to raise your voice, we're going to talk aggressively, and then the motivation to be able to drive is probably going to decrease. So it's a lovely, safe environment to be able to, start off, kickstart the driving experience, and that's how we've utilized it at our company, to be able to kickstart and really test it out. And like I said in the interview, there's times where it's highlighted that it's not a safe driving fit at the moment for certain clients, and because of the simulator, we've been able to really test that out.
Yeah, no, that's good. Sounds good. Well, I think that's it, folks. And as we wind up this episode, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT, for helping us bring you the interview with Alex and Lisa today. Yes, that's right. Alex and Lisa. There we go. Williams OT, driver AX and rehab is all pieces of the puzzle to assist people with disabilities reach their driving and community mobility goals. Mobility Engineering is a team of passionate and dedicated people focused on bringing Australia's largest range of suitable transport solutions for all walks of life. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, know someone who we should interview or want to interview, or just leave us a comment or want to consider something, or just want to give us some love, please email us at drivablepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on our Facebook page or just search Drivable Podcast. We're on all the platforms. Just hit us up. We'll find you and you'll find us. And as we say in every episode, the advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. And if you have any queries about what you can do and what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or your mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial. Trials really do put you in that driver's seat. So that's it, Brad. Thanks very much.
Yeah, until next week. So thanks very much, everybody. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate, and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.